World War II's origins trace back to the aftermath of the First World War, a conflict that reshaped the global landscape and left deep scars across Europe. The seeds of future conflict were sown in the treaties and agreements that followed, setting the stage for a new era of instability. The Treaty of Versailles, intended to secure peace and prevent future wars, instead left Germany humiliated and economically devastated, burdened with crippling reparations and territorial losses. This created a fertile ground for resentment and extremism to take root. This resentment fueled the rise of Adolf Hitler, a charismatic and ruthless leader who capitalized on the widespread discontent. He promised to restore Germany's pride and reclaim its former glory, appealing to a nation yearning for a return to greatness. Hitler also blamed minorities, particularly Jewish people, for the nation's woes, propagating hateful ideologies that would lead to unimaginable atrocities. By 1933, Hitler had seized power through a combination of political maneuvering and intimidation, dismantling democracy and establishing a totalitarian dictatorship that controlled every aspect of German life. Hitler's ambitions extended far beyond Germany's borders, driven by a desire to create a vast empire. Meanwhile, Italy under Mussolini embraced fascism, and Japan pursued their own aggressive expansions in Asia, seeking to establish regional dominance through military force. These expansionist powers found common ground, forming the Axis powers and solidifying their alliance. The League of Nations, designed to prevent another global conflict, proved powerless to stop their aggression, and Britain and France, haunted by the memories of World War I and desperate to avoid another devastating conflict, pursued a policy of appeasement, allowing Hitler to rearm and annex territory unchecked in the hope of maintaining peace. At the Munich Conference in 1938, they conceded the Sudetenland region of Czechoslovakia to Germany, hoping that this concession would satisfy Hitler's territorial demands and secure lasting peace. But appeasement only emboldened Hitler, fueling his belief that the Western powers lacked the will to resist his expansionist agenda. The world watched with growing alarm as the storm clouds of war gathered over Europe, threatening to engulf the continent in another devastating conflict. Despite last-ditch diplomatic efforts, war was now inevitable, a tragic consequence of unchecked aggression and failed diplomacy. On September 1, 1939, the world held its breath as the dark clouds of war gathered once more over Europe. Germany unleashed its military might, invading Poland with blitzkrieg tactics, a new and terrifying form of warfare. This lightning war was a swift, overwhelming force combining coordinated air and ground assaults to break enemy lines with unprecedented speed. The world watched in horror as Poland became the testing ground for this devastating strategy. Britain and France, bound by treaty to defend Poland, declared war on Germany, but their support, though resolute, came far too late for Poland, which was already reeling from the onslaught. The nation was crushed between the relentless German advance and a Soviet invasion from the east, a betrayal that sealed Poland's fate. The country was brutally divided between the invaders, its people subjected to a harsh and unforgiving occupation under Nazi rule. Resistance was met with swift and merciless reprisal. After Poland's fall, Europe entered the unsettling calm of the phony war, a tense lull as Britain and France waited seemingly secure behind their elaborate defenses, particularly the Maginot Line. But this period of deceptive quiet would not last. In spring 1940, Germany struck again with renewed vigor, swiftly conquering Denmark and Norway in a daring operation that secured vital strategic positions. The main assault then came, bypassing the seemingly impenetrable Maginot Line to invade France through the supposedly impassable Ardennes forest and through Belgium. The Allied forces were completely outmaneuvered, their armies split and trapped at Dunkirk, facing annihilation. A desperate evacuation against all odds managed to rescue a large portion of the British Expeditionary Force across the English Channel. France, deprived of its allies, quickly fell in a matter of weeks. Paris was occupied by the invading German forces, and a humiliating armistice was signed, effectively surrendering the nation to Nazi control. With France defeated, Britain now stood alone against the might of the German war machine. The unprecedented speed and sheer ferocity of the blitzkrieg tactics had shocked the world and redrawn the map of Europe. The seemingly unstoppable Axis powers appeared to be on the verge of total victory, their ambitions unchecked. The fate of Europe, and indeed the world, hung precariously in the balance, overshadowed by the looming threat of Nazi domination. The Second World War had truly begun, and its outcome was far from certain. With France defeated and mainland Europe largely under Nazi control, the situation looked grim for the Allied forces. The swiftness of the German blitzkrieg had shocked the world, and many wondered where Hitler would strike next. Hitler set his sights on Britain, believing that its fall would secure his dominance over Western Europe. He initiated plans for Operation Sea Lion, a proposed invasion of the British Isles. The Battle of Britain raged in the skies, a crucial air campaign that would determine the fate of the nation. The Royal Air Force, though outnumbered, fought valiantly, intercepting wave after wave of Luftwaffe bombers targeting British cities and strategic infrastructure. The skies above England became a deadly arena. Churchill's leadership, his unwavering resolve, and the courage of the few who piloted the Spitfires and Hurricanes inspired the nation. Despite the relentless bombing and the immense destruction, Britain stood firm, its spirit unbroken, ensuring its survival against seemingly insurmountable odds. Meanwhile, the war spread to North Africa, a theater of conflict far removed from the European mainland. Here, Axis forces, primarily the German Afrika Korps under the command of Erwin Rommel, and Allied forces clashed in a series of hard-fought battles for control of vital resources, particularly oil and the Suez Canal. In June 1941, a pivotal moment arrived. Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa, a massive and ambitious undertaking. This was the invasion of the Soviet Union, the largest land assault in history, marking a turning point in the war. German forces advanced rapidly across the vast Soviet territories, encountering initial successes. They captured vast territories, inflicting heavy casualties and besieging strategically important cities like Leningrad and Moscow, aiming to cripple the Soviet war effort. But the Soviet resistance was fierce and determined, fueled by patriotism and a deep-seated resolve to defend their homeland. As the harsh Russian winter set in, the German advance stalled, their troops and equipment ill-prepared for the extreme conditions. The Eastern Front became a brutal and unforgiving war of attrition, a grinding conflict that would consume vast resources and manpower. The conflict was now truly global, encompassing multiple continents and oceans. Battles raged across continents from Europe and Africa to Asia and the Pacific, drawing in nations from every corner of the world. The Axis powers, with their ambitions stretching across the globe, were becoming increasingly stretched thin, their resources strained by the demands of multiple fronts. The world was engulfed in total war, a conflict that mobilized entire societies and economies, leaving no aspect of life untouched. As 1941 drew to a close, the outcome of this global struggle was far from certain, with the world teetering on a knife's edge. By late 1942, the Allies began to turn the tide. At Stalingrad, Soviet forces encircled and destroyed the German Sixth Army, marking a catastrophic defeat for Hitler. In North Africa, Montgomery's victory at El Alamein forced Rommel's retreat and secured the Middle East for the Allies. Meanwhile, at Midway in the Pacific, American codebreakers ambushed the Japanese fleet, sinking 4 carriers and crippling Japan's naval power. These victories shattered the Axis aura of invincibility. The Allies seized the initiative, launching offensives on multiple fronts. The war's momentum shifted. The Axis powers were now on the defensive. The cost was immense, but hope returned to the Allied nations. The path to victory was opening. The world watched as fortunes changed. With momentum on their side, the Allies pressed forward. In 1943 they invaded Sicily, toppling Mussolini and forcing Italy's surrender, though German resistance continued. The Italian campaign was grueling, but it tied down Axis forces. The main Allied effort focused on France, Operation Overlord, the D-Day landings in Normandy on June 6, 1944. Despite fierce German resistance, Allied troops established a foothold and began liberating France. Paris was freed in August, and by autumn, most of Western Europe was liberated. Meanwhile, the Soviets advanced relentlessly from the east. Germany was caught in a vice, squeezed from both sides. The Third Reich's days were numbered. The Allies closed in for the final blow. In winter 1944, Hitler's last gamble, the Battle of the Bulge, briefly threatened Allied lines but ultimately failed. The Allies crossed the Rhine. The Soviets stormed Berlin. Hitler, facing defeat, took his own life as Berlin fell. Germany surrendered unconditionally in May 1945, VE Day. But in the Pacific, Japan fought on, resisting fiercely as the Allies advanced island by island. To avoid a costly invasion, President Truman authorized atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945. The devastation was unprecedented. Facing destruction and Soviet invasion, Japan surrendered. World War II was over. The world was forever changed. The cost in lives and suffering was staggering. A new era was about to begin. The war's end left the world in ruins. Cities destroyed, millions dead or displaced. The Holocaust horrors were revealed, and Nazi leaders faced justice at Nuremberg. The United Nations was founded aiming to prevent future global conflict. Yet peace was fragile. The US and Soviet Union emerged as rival superpowers, their ideological clash igniting the Cold War. Europe was divided by the Iron Curtain. Nuclear weapons cast a shadow over humanity. The legacy of World War II shaped the modern world, politically, socially, and morally. Its lessons endure, a warning and a hope for future generations. The world would never be the same.